Back to the 1970s, facing my husband's body, I signed the body donation form as soon as possible. At this time in my previous life, my husband died unexpectedly. My mother-in-law and adopted son cried so hard that they almost fainted. I rushed to the town to help during the day and sewed shoe soles at night. I supported this family alone. My adopted son successfully entered the university, but I was caught in a factory machine due to overwork. In order to save money, I gave up treatment and had one leg amputated. But on the day when my adopted son entered school, I saw my husband, who should have died in a suit and tie, hugging a woman and smiling gently. My adopted son excitedly called out "Mom" and "Dad," and my mother-in-law also stood by with a smile. I rushed over to question the situation but was hit and killed by a speeding truck. When I opened my eyes again, I looked coldly at the people from the National Research Institute who came to take away my husband's body. Comrade Jessica, are you sure you've thought it over? Even if Captain Jonathan has signed the body donation form, as long as the family members disagree, we will still respect the family members' wishes. Don't think about it. Looking at Jonathan's lifeless body, I sneered and interrupted the medical staff. In my previous life, he faked his death and left the whole family with his ex-wife, and I gave up the opportunity to go to the best university. After years of hard work taking care of the whole family, this is the outcome. Anger and resentment burned my heart like a raging fire. I watched the medical staff take the body out of the coffin and put it in the car. Comrade Jessica, your husband's body will be sent to the Provincial Medical Research Institute. The research projects are confidential. If there is a chance, we will let you meet again. We deeply remember the great contributions you and Comrade Jonathan made to the country. The accompanying officer saluted me and drove away. I looked at the empty coffin, sneered, and covered the coffin lid as if nothing had happened. After a while, the mother-in-law came back with the adopted son. The woman walking beside her was wearing a small dress and had curly hair. I recognized her at a glance as Jonathan's ex-wife, Ellie. She was a military doctor in Jonathan's regiment. After getting married and giving birth to a child, she abandoned her family for the sake of her future, left her son, and went with Jonathan. When Jonathan married me, he claimed that Ellie was a cold-blooded and vicious woman, and he would never have anything to do with her again in this life. As a result, Jonathan went to great lengths to fake his death just to be able to live together with Ellie. When the mother-in-law saw me, she immediately put away the smile on her face and hurriedly asked people to bring the coffin for burial. Seeing the thin layer of soil covering the coffin with my own eyes, I felt a surge of satisfaction in my heart. After watching the coffin being buried, the mother-in-law glared at me and cursed, "You are such a jinx. It is not enough that you have killed your parents, but now you have killed my son. Since you came into the house, you have eaten so much rice from my family. My family has been good to you, right? Why are you harming us like this?" When she saw me standing there in a daze, her face became even angrier. "You jinx, what are you doing here? The villagers will be here soon for the feast. You should go to work quickly." Ellie was also beside her, sneering. "Mom, you have a hard life. A good family has been ruined like this by this woman. Jonathan originally had a lot of subsidies in the army. Now how can he make that much money with this woman? Unless he sends her to be sold, you have to keep an eye on her. Make her compensate you well." The mother-in-law opened her mouth and wanted to spit out some vicious words when an excited voice outside the door interrupted her. "Sister Jessica, you were admitted to Yen University. Your letter of admission has arrived." My partner, who took the college entrance examination with me, walked in happily. At this time in my previous life, I cried and fainted when I learned of my husband's death. When I woke up, my husband had already been buried. I didn't even know that I had passed the exam a long time ago, and it was many years later. The partner who prepared for the exam with me accidentally hired me as a part-time worker many years later. When I came to clean her villa, she saw my face that was 10 years older than hers and my hands full of calluses. She sighed distressfully. "If you had gone to Yen University back then, you would definitely be much better off than me now." I froze for a moment, and only then did I know the truth of the past. Now looking at the words Yen University on the letter of admission, I am trembling all over. Just as I was about to take it, my mother-in-law snatched it away. "Go to college. You have to go to college. Andy, don't look at Sister Jessica because she is a little older, but she is much smarter than us. She was admitted to the most difficult Yen university. How many people can't get in even if they sharpen their brains? My partner said excitedly, but my mother-in-law's face sank. She scolded in a cold voice. Who allowed you to go? You're not allowed to go. As she said this, she mercilessly tore my notice into pieces. When the debris flew into the air, I subconsciously wanted to catch it, but my mother-in-law turned around and slapped me to the ground. My cheeks instantly became red and swollen, and the burning pain spread across my face. My friend was so anxious that tears were about to come out. When he was at a loss, a powerful voice rang out. What are you doing? The village chief walked in and saw me lying on the ground. He glanced at my mother-in-law and Ellie with scrutiny. Wow, Mom doesn't want us anymore. The adopted son burst into tears very cleverly. At such a young age, his eyes were full of the same resentment as my mother-in-law. Uncle Village Chief, my father just died. You have to make the decision for me and Grandma. Village Chief, that's not right. Sister Jessica was admitted to Yen University. I came to tell you the news, but the aunt didn't let Sister Jessica go to college. My friend hurriedly stood up and spoke for me. Ugh, go to college. My mother-in-law glared at me and started to curse at me again. Jessica, this unlucky star. Did you suck away my son's luck? You killed my son, but you got into college yourself. Are you thinking of getting rid of us grandparents and grandchildren? She sat down on the ground and cried, I have a miserable life. My son just died, and the coffin is still here. As a result, the child's mother has to go to the provincial capital to go to college. What should we do with our family? The adopted son also cried loudly. Even Ellie agreed. Village Chief, what's the point of reading for a woman like this? Shouldn't she take good care of the family and educate her children well? After hearing this, the village chief sighed. Jessica, Ellie is right. Your family's current situation is indeed not suitable for going to college. What's more, you still have tuition fees. Where are you going to get the tuition fees? Listen to me, take care of the family first. You have old and young people here, and they all depend on you. When my friend heard this, he hurried to explain to me, but her mother heard the noise and pulled her away. The villagers who gathered around also pointed and said, I thought the Jonathan family was a peaceful family. I didn't expect that Jonathan had just died. I was thinking of running away. I saw the village chief picking up the pieces of the notice and was about to throw it away. I stood up in a panic. No, I will find a way to pay for the tuition myself. The village chief didn't expect me to be so stubborn. His face suddenly fell. Ellie also pretended to be surprised. Jessica, isn't it just a university? Since you have the ability, why do you want to go now when your child is older? You're not thinking about other things. When she hinted, the mother-in-law immediately laughed in anger. I think you must have someone else outside, and you pay the tuition yourself. You are not hooking up with a rich man and waiting for my son to die to go to him. The mother-in-law was so angry that her face turned red. She picked up a fire stick beside her and smashed it directly on me. I will break your legs today to see if you are honest or not. The village chief was about to stop her, but the secretary hurried over and called him away. Before leaving, the mother-in-law promised not to do anything to me, but closed the door. She and Ellie both smiled proudly. Now I want to see who can help you. I was just about to run away when Ellie grabbed me and the adopted son brought a rope and tied my hands directly. You actually still want to go to college. My Jonathan's family took you in with good intentions back then, and now you're thinking of just patting your butt and walking away? You're dreaming. Ellie, Tom, catch her. Don't let her run away. I'll break her legs today and see how she goes to college. Seeing my mother-in-law approaching me with a fire poker, anger rose up in my chest like fire. In my previous life, I was obedient and didn't go to college, but they showed no mercy to me at all, treating me like a beast of burden. Not giving me food was the norm, and in winter, in order to save money on clothes, they asked me to stuff some hay into my pants to cushion them. I sewed the soles of my shoes until my eyes were red and swollen, and I almost went blind, but they scolded me for my speed. In this life, I must get rid of them and can't let them ruin my life. With this thought, my strength suddenly burst out, and I kicked the adopted son away and was about to run out. Ellie grabbed my hair and pulled me back forcefully. A burning pain swept over me and I screamed in pain. I lost my balance and fell to the ground. A large piece of skin on my knee was scraped. How dare you hit my son? Ellie widened her eyes, pulled my hair, and forced me to look up, and slapped me hard. The smell of blood in my mouth spread immediately. You unlucky star. The adopted son got up and kicked me a few times, spitting out vicious curses. The mother-in-law stared at me with her mean slanted eyes, as if she wanted to swallow me into her stomach. Seeing that I was still struggling, she sneered. Ellie, do you have anesthetics for animals? Give her an injection. I froze and looked at the mother-in-law in disbelief. Ellie stood up with a laugh, the malice in her eyes almost overflowing. Yes, I'll give you enough. I watched her approach me with a syringe and began to struggle desperately. Help, someone come quickly. You can't do this to me. I am Jonathan's wife after all. The mother-in-law picked up a rag and stuffed it in my mouth, then turned against me and clamped me. She laughed viciously. Haha, you still know that you are Jonathan's wife, and you still want to go to college and escape? Where can you escape to? In this life, you have to work like a slave for my Jonathan family. The cold needle hole touched my skin, and I felt a tingling pain in my arm. The next second, my head became very heavy, and my throat seemed to be strangled tightly, and I couldn't make any sound. The mother-in-law laughed sarcastically. This medicine is quite effective. It will be much more obedient after taking a little. As she spoke, she raised the fire stick, aimed at my thigh, and smashed it down with all her strength. There was a dull sound, and the intense pain suddenly swept over me. My eyes were clear in an instant, and I gritted my teeth in pain. I wanted to escape despite the resistance. Grandma, Mom, she can still move, like a fish that is about to be killed. The adopted son looked at my embarrassed appearance and clapped his hands in excitement. Well, do you want another injection? The mother-in-law spoke, but Ellie smiled jokingly. No, how can a fish on the chopping board resist? Besides, don't you think it's fun to watch her struggle? The two looked at each other. There was a light of pride and joy in their eyes. I'm here, you take a rest. Ellie took the fire stick from the mother-in-law's hand and looked at me with interest. Despair was like a huge net that completely wrapped me. I clenched my teeth and closed my eyes resignedly. But the door was suddenly broken open, and a group of people in Zhongshan suits walked in. This is Jonathan's home, right? We are from the Provincial Medical Research Institute. The leading man took out a silk banner and handed it to the mother-in-law, thanking Jonathan and you as relatives for your spirit of dedication to the country. The institute has now officially dissected his body. This box contains a piece of Jonathan's bone, which is specially left for the family as a souvenir. The mother-in-law was stunned for an instant, and the fire stick in her hand fell to the ground with a bang. What did you say? Dissection and bones. What are you talking about? Seeing that the mother-in-law had an ugly face and looked extremely unlucky, Ellie also hurried forward. Sorry, did you find the wrong person? The young man leading the team was stunned. Isn't this Jonathan's home? His body was donated to the Provincial Research Institute. We came here specially to thank the family. What the hell are you talking about? What are you talking about at such a young age? My Jonathan is fine. Who donated his body to you? As soon as the young man finished speaking, the grandmother's face turned red. She was so angry that her chest heaved violently, spitting all over the place, and kept cursing him. She picked up the broom next to her and was about to drive him out. The young man couldn't stand it and quickly put the things he brought on the ground. Auntie, Comrade Jonathan's donation information and relics are all here. We'll leave first. Several people got into the car, as if they were fleeing. Damn, what are these people talking about? The grandmother spat and angrily said something ugly. No, Mom, come and see. Is this Jonathan's watch? Ellie suddenly screamed. The grandmother came over, and her pupils suddenly dilated. And this lists the information on it matches Jonathan's. Ellie trembled and opened her mouth, turning the paper over and over again. She couldn't help but test it. Mom, did Jonathan's former unit sign this thing? How is it possible? Isn't Jonathan in the coffin well? Didn't we watch him being buried? The grandmother's words hadn't even fallen yet, and the two looked at each other. They all saw fear and terror in each other's eyes. I sneered in my heart. When burying the body, they were not sure whether Jonathan was in the coffin. What was going on? What were they arguing about? The village chief heard the noise and came over, frowned, and asked. But my mother-in-law was so frightened that her whole body couldn't stop shaking. She stammered and murmured, "No, the person is not fine. There must be something wrong." Seeing the village chief, she felt like she saw a life-saving straw. She grabbed the village chief in a panic. "Village chief, open the coffin." Jonathan was gone. Before everyone could react, my mother-in-law ran to Jonathan's grave like crazy. Everyone had to follow her, but they saw her digging the soil with her bare hands. "Jonathan, don't scare your mother," she cried and begged. "Come on, I want to open the coffin. Everyone come and save Jonathan." I looked at her in such a miserable state and pretended to be concerned, saying, "Mom, do you miss Jonathan too much? Jonathan is already dead, and the coffin has been buried. What else do you have to say?" But my mother-in-law suddenly looked up and met my meaningful smile. The confusion in her eyes was replaced by resentment. "It was you. Is it you who did this?" "It's you. Jonathan must still be in the coffin. What those people said about autopsy must be a lie." She collapsed to the ground in panic. She no longer cared about Ellie's desperate eyes and knelt down to beg the village chief. "Village chief, Jonathan is not dead. Let's dig out the coffin quickly." The village chief frowned, with a scrutinizing look in his eyes. I also spoke. "Mom, what do you mean by this? How can you say Jonathan is not dead? Jonathan's death is fake. Now the person is still in the coffin. Open the coffin and save him." As soon as these words came out, Ellie's face turned ugly. She quickly interrupted her mother-in-law. "Mom, what nonsense are you talking about? You must have missed Jonathan too much, so you want to see him for the last time." I also covered my chest with a look of grief and joy. "Is Jonathan alive? It's good that people are alive. Quickly, open the coffin." The mother-in-law cried hysterically. "Yes, Jonathan is alive. He is faking his death. What medicine did he take? We can't tell." The mother-in-law only wanted to save Jonathan. I didn't notice at all that the village chief's face had turned ugly black. Ellie next to him had an even stiffer face. Everyone had no choice but to work together to dig out the coffin. Grandma's eyes were red. She snatched the axe from the person next to her, and without caring about anything else, she chopped the coffin open. It was still empty inside. Grandma and Ellie were stunned. "Where's Jonathan?" The villagers were panicked and spoke tremblingly. Grandma looked into the coffin in disbelief, but didn't find a single figure. Jonathan's mother, the coffin was also opened. "What you meant just now was that Jonathan was not dead and was locked in the coffin. Then where is the person now?" The village chief stared at Grandma with a dark look in his eyes. Grandma stood there in confusion, her eyes swept over the people present. When her eyes met mine, I curled my lips and smiled, but the next moment, I knelt in front of Grandma, tears rolling down my face. "Mom, since Jonathan is not dead, you should explain the matter clearly. Those people who said that Jonathan was dissected must be false. Jonathan might have escaped by himself a long time ago." And before Grandma could react, I turned around and grabbed Ellie's skirt. "Ellie, you are Jonathan's ex-wife, right? You know Jonathan. Has he ever come to see you?" "What nonsense are you talking about? What does it have to do with Ellie?" The mother-in-law interrupted me at the top of her voice, but her words were full of panic because the eyes of the villagers around her had changed. They were no longer sympathetic but teasing, as if they were waiting for her to explain clearly. When she saw the mockery in my eyes, the mother-in-law completely lost control of her emotions. She rushed over and grabbed my hair. "It was you who did this, right? Tell me, was it you who did that body donation? You killed Jonathan, and now you are donating his body. What are you thinking? I'm not going to beat you to death today. This good coffin will be yours." Her eyes were red, and she was extremely crazy. She used all her strength to beat my body hard. I screamed in pain, my face was covered with tears, and I begged, "Mom, don't hit me. I don't know anything. Didn't Jonathan fake his death? Then how could he be dissected? He must be fine now." When the mother-in-law heard this, she suddenly stopped. She murmured as if to comfort herself, "Yes, Jonathan is blessed with a long life. He must be fine." She turned around and knelt in front of the village chief, begging, "Village chief, please help me look for him. Jonathan must not be dead. The village chief's face was as dark as ink. His eyes were full of scrutiny and contempt. Then tell me, why did Jonathan fake his death? How can we help you if you don't explain clearly? She paused, bit her lip, and said nothing. Ellie beside her had already frozen, her back soaked with cold sweat. Her mother-in-law glanced at her. A hint of ruthlessness flashed in her eyes. She gritted her teeth and said, "It was her, it was Ellie, this who seduced my son. I don't know what means she used. Jonathan has been thinking about her all the time. This lost her husband, so she came back to deceive my son, and begged my son to fake his death and elope with her." As soon as these words came out, it was like a thunderclap exploding above people's heads. Everyone's eyes suddenly became meaningful. Ellie could no longer stand. Her eyes sank, and there was obvious anger and unwillingness in her eyes. But she couldn't refute it at the moment, so she could only pretend to be innocent, throwing this basin of dirty water back at the mother-in-law. "Mom, what are you talking about? It was you who said that I should take Jonathan to the provincial capital to do big business. You also said that Sister Jessica is a hen that doesn't lay eggs. Jonathan is really unlucky to marry her. He is lucky to be with me," she cried miserably. "My husband just died, and I have no relatives. I wanted to come to see the child. I was confused by what the mother-in-law said. I didn't do anything from beginning to end." Seeing Ellie pretending to be pitiful, the mother-in-law was so angry that her chest rose and fell violently. The anger rushed to her head, forcing the mother-in-law to step forward and slap her. "Enough, what are you doing?" The village chief scolded coldly and stopped this farce. "Okay, I know the situation. You are making a fuss. Aren't you ashamed? Others are ashamed for you. Do you know what kind of problem this is? Faking death, eloping this is 100 times more serious than the style problem." The village chief's eyes were sharp and his voice was full of anger. "Go home and wait for notification. I will ask the higher-ups about donating your body." The mother-in-law and Ellie were driven back home. The mother-in-law was still immersed in the sorrow of her son's life or death. She turned around and saw Ellie's shrewd look. She was immediately furious and slapped her fiercely. Your husband died and you came to cheat my son. Now he has been harmed like this." Ellie was caught off guard and staggered. A trace of ruthlessness flashed in her eyes, but when she looked up, she looked innocent and pitiful again. "Mom, I am also sincere to Jonathan. I plan to use the money left by my man to help Jonathan make a living in the provincial capital. I even helped him to build connections. I'm just waiting for Jonathan to make some achievements and take over our family." After hearing this, the mother-in-law's expression eased a little. "Okay, you take good care of the child for me these few days and wait for Jonathan to come back." She didn't dare to be too harsh on Ellie, so she could only vent her anger on me. "In the past 2 days, she asked me to do this and that every day, cooking and washing for them, chopping wood and making fire, just like their maid. But the mother-in-law didn't know I had secretly stolen all my dowry and sold it in town for some money. I also asked my friend who was admitted to Yen University to go to the admissions office to reissue my admission letter, just waiting to get rid of their family completely in the future." My mother-in-law and Ellie seemed to have lived in peace for a few days, but after observing her, I found that Ellie was obviously distancing herself from her adopted son. In the past, she hoped that her adopted son would only have eyes for her so that she could show off that she was his biological mother. But now, whenever her adopted son called her mother, she would remind him, "Tom, you have to call Jessica mother, otherwise people will think too much when they hear it." I found her shrewdness funny. There was no news from Jonathan for a long time, so she probably believed that he was gone. Now she is thinking about how to get rid of this family. Sure enough, one day my mother-in-law screamed and found that she could not find her gold ring. "Damn it, which bastard touched my gold ring? You are tired of living, right?" My mother-in-law stormed out of the house. Ellie looked guilty and walked up to her with a stiff smile. "Mom, you should look for it carefully." "What the hell? It must have been stolen. I put it there safely." The mother-in-law spat and cursed with a red face. A trace of panic flashed across Ellie's face. She glanced at me and rolled her eyes. "I seemed to see Jessica go into the inner room this morning. It wouldn't be for going to college. Jessica touched Mom's things. The mother-in-law suspected me in the first place." After Ellie said that, my motive for stealing became reasonable. She rolled up her sleeves and laughed angrily. Well, I said you were honest these 2 days, but it turns out you were secretly preparing to do something bad, little one. You dare to steal my things? I will beat you to death. She cursed with gnashing teeth, picked up the carrying pole next to her, and walked towards me with a ferocious face. When the pole fell, I quickly dodged it, which made the mother-in-law even more angry. She cursed. You dare to hide? I will beat you until you spit out your gold ring today. What are you doing? Suddenly, a strong voice interrupted and stopped the mother-in-law's actions. The village chief walked in with an envelope. She glanced around with a grim expression. The higher-ups had notified her that there was no such thing as faking death for Comrade Jonathan. He was just dead, and his body was taken to the Provincial Capital Research Institute for experiments. Because you want to investigate, the higher-ups specially sent a few photos and a consolation payment, a total of 1,000. You can take it, Jonathan's mother. The mother-in-law widened her eyes in disbelief. She snatched the black and white photo from the village chief's hand. On it was Jonathan, stripped naked, and lying on the laboratory table. Impossible. How could this be Jonathan? The mother-in-law's lips trembled constantly, her eyes were full of fear and shock, and she murmured in a low voice like a dream. Jonathan obviously took the fake death drug. Won't he wake up soon? He has even bought the train ticket. I don't want this stinky money. Give my son back. She widened her eyes, grabbed the village chief's clothes tightly, and shouted at the top of her voice. However, Ellie quickly picked up the envelope with the money and hurried to comfort the mother-in-law. Mom, let's calm down first. Things have come to this. But the mother-in-law didn't listen at all.
She saw me standing by.
Her eyes were instantly filled with rage. Did you do it? You sent Jonathan for autopsy, didn't you, you cheap thing? She didn't know where the strength came from, but she grabbed my neck with all her strength. Her fingers kept tightening, and her nails dug into my flesh. I suffocated and couldn't squeeze out a word from my throat. I only saw the hideous and deformed face of my mother-in-law getting bigger and bigger. Go down and accompany my son. The village chief couldn't stand it anymore and kicked my mother-in-law directly, sending her flying. He had a dark face and cursed. No matter whether he is really dead or faking his death, when we drag him to the provincial capital, professional equipment will show that he is dead. Are you going to make a fuss to the higher-ups and say that Jonathan faked his death in order to elope with his lover, and that the higher-ups made a mistake and dissected a living person? If you have the guts, go ahead and make a fuss. The village chief was obviously very angry, and his clenched fists were bulging with blue veins. Your family should behave yourself. If you make trouble again, I will not show mercy, he angrily said, slammed the door and left. All the strength in my mother-in-law's body seemed to be drained away. Her legs went limp, and she collapsed to the ground. While her mother-in-law was immersed in the grief of Jonathan's death, Ellie's eyes were always on the consolation money. She originally wanted to find another backer. Now that Jonathan is dead, should she stay and take care of the old and the child like me? Of course, Ellie was unwilling to accept this, so she watched the opportunity and stole the consolation money while her mother-in-law was out working and was about to escape. But unexpectedly, she was bumped into by the adopted son, who came out. Seeing Ellie sneaking around with the box, the vicious adopted son, who grew up with her mother-in-law and inherited her mother-in-law's style, saw through her thoughts at a glance, pouted, and burst into tears. Grandma, Mom doesn't want me anymore. Mom is going to run away. Ellie panicked, and her face changed drastically. She covered the child's mouth with her hand. She was patient and whispered to comfort him. Mom is not going to abandon Tom. Mom has something to do, and will be back. She turned around and wanted to leave, but the adopted son was not so easy to fool. He grabbed Ellie's clothes, dragged her tightly, and shouted to the outside, Grandma, Mom is going to run away. Ellie was anxious and panicked. She didn't know where she got the strength from, but pushed the man hard. The adopted son didn't stand firmly, took 2 steps back, and actually fell into the well. While she was stunned, Ellie's head was full of cold sweat, and her hands couldn't stop shaking. She thought about turning around and leaving, but this would definitely prove that there was something wrong with her. She thought quickly, gritted her teeth, knocked on my door, and before I could react, she pulled me into the yard and started yelling, Help! Come and save people. Hearing the noise, my mother-in-law dropped her hoe and ran in. Ellie's tears fell. Mom. Jessica stole the comfort money and wanted to run away and also pushed Tom into the well. What? My mother-in-law's face changed suddenly. Looking at the dark well, she hurried out to call for help. When everyone dragged the child up, his breath was already very weak. It was Jessica who did it. I saw her push the child in with my own eyes. Ellie's face was already pale, and she grabbed me in a panic. It was she who stole the compensation money and wanted to escape to go to college. My mother-in-law looked up, her eyes full of resentment. Jessica, how did our family offend you? You actually want to harm us to this extent. I met Ellie's extremely guilty eyes and just sneered. I didn't do this. If it wasn't you who did it, there are only you and me at home. It can't be that I, the biological mother, would harm Tom. Ellie's voice was sharp, but her words were urgent. Take the child to the hospital first. Saving lives is important. The village chief spoke, and everyone agreed. Yes, save people first, and we can talk about it later. But I took the initiative to say, Village chief, take me to the village collective. I won't go with you. Don't you all suspect that I am a suspect? Then put me in the solitary confinement room first. The village chief glanced at me unexpectedly. Seeing that I had a clear and dignified look, and then looking at Ellie's timid, guilty, and flustered look, he had a rough idea in his mind, so he nodded in agreement. While everyone was running to the hospital, I packed my luggage directly and moved it to the village collective. As long as we wait for the village chief to find out the facts, I went directly to the provincial capital. In the evening, the village chief came back with a sullen face. He rubbed his brows and said, Jessica, your little baby couldn't be rescued. He looked at me deeply and sighed. I know you are not that kind of person and can't do such a thing. Now Ellie refuses to admit it and insists that you did it. Your mother-in-law was about to come and settle accounts with you, but I stopped her. Now she is still making trouble at home. It's all as expected. Fortunately, I came to the village collective early. Otherwise, I don't know how my mother-in-law would attack me. Thank you, village chief. Didn't Ellie say that I stole things to go to college? Before, my mother-in-law lost a gold ring, and she insisted that I did it. Maybe you can start from here. I chuckled and reminded. The village chief instantly understood what I meant. His brows relaxed, and he laughed loudly. Okay, I will investigate it carefully and give you a clear name. The village chief kept his word. In just one day, he found the mother-in-law's gold ring from Ellie. Under the village chief's warning, she panicked and told everything. On the day of the adopted son's burial, she knelt in front of her mother-in-law and slapped herself more than a dozen times. She cried with tears all over her face and looked extremely embarrassed. She only begged her mother-in-law to forgive her. She knew that as a nurse in the People's Hospital of the provincial capital, if a problem of this nature was reported, she would have to spend the rest of her life in jail. The mother-in-law who knew the truth was out of breath and almost fainted. The rage in her chest rushed straight to her head. The mother-in-law suddenly picked up a stone and smashed it on Ellie's head. She had completely lost her mind and smashed it fiercely, again and again, and blood splattered everywhere. Before everyone could react, they only heard Ellie's heartbreaking cry, You've ruined my family, killed my son, and killed my grandson. Get down and apologize to them. The mother-in-law was blinded by anger and laughed wildly. She became more and more excited as she smashed, until Ellie's breath became weak. Stop, let someone come. The village chief who hurriedly brought me there saw the scene and shouted in panic. The villagers then reacted and hurried forward to dissuade them. Several big men controlled the mother-in-law. The others rushed to check on Ellie's condition and quickly sent her to the clinic. The mother-in-law seemed to be still in a daze at this time. She stared at her hands full of blood in a daze, crying and laughing with a crazy look. When she was dragged away, her cloudy eyes fell on me, as if she had realized something, and suddenly grabbed the corner of my clothes and knelt down. Jessica, my son and grandson are all gone. Mom only has you as a daughter now. You have to help Mom. I was stunned for a moment and looked at her in disbelief. Now she finally realized what she had done and what situation she was facing. She regarded me as her last straw, no longer arrogant, cold, and disgusted as before. At this moment, her old face was full of begging, and she forced a smile and waited for my reaction. I thought it was funny. How could she shamelessly expect that everything in the past would be written off? Did she forget that it was she who let the wolf into the house and safely handed over her son and grandson to Ellie, a woman? Didn't she think that Ellie was her ideal daughter-in-law, and I was just a maid in their family who deserved to work like a cow and give everything? Take her away. Take her away. Don't you know what you have done? Isn't this the scene you created? You are not still counting on Jessica to provide for your old age, are you? The village chief sneered and mercilessly exposed her thoughts. He did not give her a chance to speak and directly dragged her away. A few days later, the village chief told me that Ellie was out of danger after rescue, but what awaited her and her mother-in-law was the trial of the Provincial Public Security Bureau. The start time of Yanda University was approaching. I worked during the day and made sols in the commune at night. Finally, I managed to collect enough tuition fees. I could live in the provincial capital later. There were a lot of expenses on weekdays. Just when I was worrying about what to do, the village chief suddenly convened a collective meeting. At the meeting, he explained everything about Tiancher's family in detail. Everyone knew that our village had a top student, Comrade Jessica, who was admitted to Yanda University in the provincial capital. This is the best university. How many rich people in the city can't get in even if they try their best? Our Jessica worked during the day and squeezed out time to review, and finally passed the exam. He spoke passionately and praised me to the sky. Finally, he coughed lightly. Our village is a place of solidarity and mutual assistance. Now Comrade Jessica needs us exactly, so we have to lend a hand. And in the future, it will be the time when we need Comrade Jessica. I believe that our Comrade Jessica is a promising person. After graduation, he will definitely lead our fellow villagers to live a good life. There was warm applause from the audience. The old lady at the head of the village spoke first. I don't have much savings, but I have a lot of chickens. Give us a basket of eggs from Jessica. Others also spoke up. I'll take 3 eggs and donate 5 yuan. Seeing the enthusiasm of the villagers, my eyes became sore. I gave the village chief a look of gratitude. I stepped forward and said solemnly, Dear uncles, aunts, grandpas, and grandmas, Jessica, took a penny from the villagers today, and I will definitely return it double in the future. The village chief laughed loudly and said, Everyone can see what kind of person you are on weekdays. Besides, our village has a college student, and we are also proud of it. Don't you think so? The villagers responded and laughed one after another. I laughed too. I laughed, and my eyes became blurred. Soon it was the day to start school. The village chief personally sent me to Yen University in the provincial capital. Before I left, he secretly stuffed a wad of money into my pocket. When I refused, he said with a stern face, I'm lending you this. This is called investment, don't you understand? When you become successful in the future, you must promote me. I accepted his kindness with a smile. With this energy, I studied very hard. Even the strictest and most rigid old professor in the department would smile and praise me when he saw me. Jessica, you are my most promising student. 4 years passed in a flash, and I successfully entered the Provincial Medical Research Institute and became a medical researcher. I sent all the scholarships I received in these 4 years to the village chief, asking him to help me pay them back to the villagers. As soon as the subsidy from the research institute came, I used the money to build roads for the village. When the villagers saw it, they cried and laughed. Whenever I went home, they would take me to their homes for dinner. I, who had never had a real home, had a warm family by accident. On the first day I entered the research institute, I saw a suspicious figure. She was wandering at the gate of the research institute. When she saw people coming in and out, she would grab them and ask them something. When I passed by, she also grabbed me. When she raised her head, a very old and wrinkled face was revealed. Even though her hair was unkempt and dirty, I still recognized that it was my mother-in-law.
She was also startled when she saw me.
A glimmer of clarity flashed in her eyes, but soon turned into blankness. She just repeated mechanically, Is my Jonathan in there? Have you seen Jonathan? My colleagues came to pull me away. Don't bother with her. This old lunatic is here every day. It's so annoying. I heard that he had been in jail for murder before. He had just been released. I was pulled into the research institute. I turned around and saw my mother-in-law collapsed on the ground, crying like a child. "My son, where are you?" I just took a look and turned my head away. She deserved all this. What happened to her had nothing to do with me. I opened a research plan and also opened a new chapter in my life.